face and your name tag in the same thing. Then if you could do it again.
All right. All right, 1, 2, 3. All right, very good.
If we have to do it again, I had 2 pages online.
All right, I got you.
Okay.
Go ahead one more time.
One more time, everybody hold your maps up or your name tags up.
All right, 1, 2, 3. There we go. That should be everyone.
Fantastic. When I was doing that, I saw that Tori, do you want to say hi?
Good morning, everyone. I'm still getting set up to join you all, but I'm Tori Vogelsang, and I'm happy to be here with you.
Great, thanks so much. Okay, so there we go. Okay, well, thank you all so much for the introductions. It's so exciting to meet a new cohort of college coaches, and we're just thrilled to have you. As I said earlier, this is our very first virtual training, and so we're going to learn a lot from it, and we want you to give us input as we go along. So the agenda for today, I'm going to do a very short intro to college coaches, and then Meg and Keith are going to talk a little bit more about the program. And then Keith and Kyle are going to talk about some policies and procedures, do a little bit on OnCorps timesheets, and then a little bit on member service agreements. So what we've tried to do for the virtual training is to break things up into smaller amounts, so we don't do straight an hour on OnCorps, but we're going to break it up into little pieces so that it's more absorbable. We'll do a little checkout, getting close to 12:30, and then you'll have a lunch break from 12:30 to about 1:20, and then we'd like you to get ready for the AmeriCorps 101 at 1:30. And so if you could get on that link a little bit before 1:30 so everybody's ready to go. That is a separate link, and you should have gotten an email from the State Commission with that link. If you didn't, please put a note in the chat box and we will troubleshoot that for you. And then after that, AmeriCorps 101, the ambassadors, which you'll hear about in a little bit, and the college coaches staff will have a meeting at 3 o'clock or shortly after, as soon as we can get on. So I just wanted to tell you just a brief history of college coaches. So these people on the screen, 2 of them have moved on to other things, but back in 2009, the governor, then Governor Steve Beshear, wanted to try to address high school graduation and college going, which was fairly low in Kentucky. And so 3 of us got together. So Dream and Gentry on the left there with Partners for Education at Berea College. And then in the middle, Kia, Susan Hopkins, who was the Director of Outreach at Kia. And then myself at Kentucky Campus Compact. We got together and we did some research about what other states were doing on near-peer mentoring programs. And we created the Kentucky College Coaches Program. We sent it in for funding to the Corporation on National and Community Service. And you'll see that the Corporation for National and Community Service funds AmeriCorps programs and Senior Corps programs. So Senior Corps programs are programs for people that are 50, either 50 or 55, I can't remember, I think 55 and older, and AmeriCorps is for people of any age. So we applied for funding from the Corporation for National Service, and that came through the state commission, which is called Serve Kentucky. It's a state service commission, so it gets all the money for AmeriCorps in the state of Kentucky. And then they get that money from the corporation, and then they give it to us at the Campus Compact. And so the Kentucky Campus Compact, we are the administrators of the grant. So we send in the reports and that kind of thing. And you'll hear a little bit more about what other partners do. So we get the grant, and then that funds Kentucky College Coaches Program, which allows you to serve around the state. So how the program works is, as you heard, Kentucky Campus Compact is housed on the campus of Northern Kentucky University. So they are our fiscal agent, and they provide a ton of services for us so that we can operate. And you'll see that when you get your living allowance, it comes from Northern Kentucky University. And so they're integral to what we're doing. So once we get the funding and it goes through all the processes, then we have schools that are sponsored by KIA. You're going to hear a little bit more about what KIA is in just a few minutes. Kentucky Higher Education Assistance Authority. And so they have said, we really want to participate in this program. And so they are funding the match for 31 schools. And then the Kentucky Campus Compact has sponsored schools that the grant pays the match for the funding. And so both of these sponsored schools, all of these sponsored schools together make up Kentucky College Coaches. And for those of you who have been around for a while, there'll be a few differences this year that all college coaches will have the same experience regardless of who they're being sponsored by. So everybody will get site visits. At the beginning, some of them may be virtual, but there will be site visits. There will be conversations with the site supervisor. Everything that's on the goal calendar will be expected of all college coaches, regardless of what school they're sponsored by. So our program goals are twofold. So let's see. Kentucky College Coaches, beginning back in 2010 when it started, was just in high school. And so we really wanted to help students graduate from high school with a plan for after high school, and we wanted them to be ready to execute that plan. So in the great majority of times, this is students going to college, but sometimes they go to military, or sometimes they do some kind of a training for their career. So now we also have college coaches in college, and our goals in that program are to help the students stay in college. As you all know, there are many barriers that get in people's way of staying in college and finishing, but we really want to help students stay in college, graduate from college, and be ready for their career. Well, this didn't turn out really great, but anyway, I wanted to just point out the training for these three. We're going to have 3 weeks of training. And so today is a longer day, 10 to 3 with a break for lunch. And then August 4th through 7th and 10th through 14th, Monday through Friday, 10 to 12. And then August 17th through 19th is 10 through 12. But on Thursday, August 20th, we're going to be meeting from 1 to 4:30. And that will be our KIA day. We'll be able to connect with the outreach counselors and do some training around college access work. So that's just a brief introduction to college coaches. You're going to be learning a lot more as we go along from people who've been around a long time. But right now, I'd like to turn it over to Meg Stevenson. For those of you who are returners, you'll know that our previous director of this program, Meredith Dean, has left the compact. And so Meg Stevenson, she's our interim director for college access and student student success. And so she's going to be the director for Kentucky College Coaches. And so I'm going to turn it over to her now. So Meg?
Great, thank you. Morning, everyone. So I'm happy to see you all here as we kick off this very unusual but energizing semester. So again, my name is Meg Stevenson. I'll be serving as Director of Student Access and Success here at the Compact. So as Gail mentioned, in addition to this program, I'll be overseeing the Kentucky College Coaches on Campus program. I did direct a TRIO project for 15 years, so I am familiar with the joys and challenges of moving people towards post-secondary enrollment and completion access as well. So I'm going to intersperse some introductions as I go through some of this, not all at once. I think you met most of our staff, although we might go back and catch up with some folks. But I wanted to focus on three things that we're going to be, that will be a focus area for this year that's different from the previous years. So the most apparent, of course, is COVID-19, which we have all experienced, but likely in very different ways. So for some, it has been an inconvenient obstacle, but for others, it might seriously be affecting families and livelihoods in very devastating ways. So we do know it's continuing and that we are still in the thick of it. So we'll prioritize safety above all else, and we will be diligent in addressing individual struggles in relation to the virus and in concert with local and state mandates. So while we will go ahead, forge ahead, plan events and training as best we can, we're prepared to adjust if we need to. And we should adjust if we need to better address what people are actually experiencing. So at least at this point, we can envision a multitude of scenarios that could happen. So hopefully we won't be caught off guard completely. But I do know that at present, even today, school board and districts are still meeting and discussing the logistics of how their schools will operate going forward. So this is an ongoing conversation that we'll all be involved with. The second change that we're going to prioritize this year and take part in is the discussion surrounding the racial justice movement. We want to take advantage of the national events and discussions surrounding anti-racism, and we have an abundance of curriculum to draw from. So we will plan to proceed with this carefully and thoughtfully. I can't state strongly enough that we all have things to learn and gain from a deep dive into this issue. So while anti-racism won't be the only topic that we will develop and discuss, we want to be very intentional about viewing all topics that we go through with a racial equity lens. That will be a priority for this year. And then the third change for this year is for us to engage you all in ongoing and regular webinars on various professional development themes. So some of those we can plan in advance, and some may just pop up out of need. Again, we want to be nimble with that. Tori Vogelsang, who just briefly introduced herself, and maybe she can come in after this really quickly and talk about this a bit more. She'll be taking the lead in developing the series for all of our VISTA and AmeriCorps members. So that's all of you, plus our larger extended service membership that we have. We have others on the college program and also with VISTA. So they'll all be involved in this. So the purpose of these trainings is to offer you beneficial skills, information, training so that you can get more benefit from your AmeriCorps experience. So we'll be looking to you all for continued input on topics and themes. What we can guarantee is that these offerings will be interesting, useful, and engaging. So if they're not, then we'll hear from you and we'll adjust, because that's what we're shooting for. So those are the three new focus areas for this year: COVID, anti-racism, and then the ongoing trainings. Tori, I want to give you a shout out. And if you want to, did you want to give a little more detailed introduction of yourself and how you'll be running these?
I'd love to. Thanks, Meg. Good morning, everyone. As Meg said, my name's Tori Vogelsang. I'm the Director of Academic Engagement at Kentucky Campus Compact. And I've been with the Compact now for about 3.5 years. And I've been involved with the coaches program in several different capacities. So I've previously served as a program advisor for our college success coaches. I've recruited for all of our AmeriCorps programs, and now I'm excited to be involved in this capacity in the professional development. A little bit about me is last night, I just finished all of my doctoral coursework in leadership development. So I'm really excited about that as I enter into candidacy and finishing my dissertation. But I'm really excited to bring that into this professional development series. And as Meg mentioned, there's really 3 core tenets of this, the approach that we're taking, and that's community engagement, anti-racism work, and dialogue work. And so we really want to help develop our AmeriCorps members so that they have an understanding of community engagement, they have tools, and that they have best practices for engaging in community dialogue and facilitating conversations around the intersection of diversity, equity, and inclusion and community engagement. So I'm really looking forward to that, doing that together. As Meg mentioned, we have topics that we'll be starting with, but this is ripe for input. So we would love to hear from you all about what topics we would like to continue to develop and address. Meg, anything else that I can add?
I think that's good for now, and we'll be sending more on that out with everybody. So thank you, appreciate it.
Thanks.
Okay, so back to some more introductions. For this year, we are continuing the KCC Ambassador Program. And for those of you who aren't familiar with this, they are a cohort of returning coaches who have shown remarkable work in their coaching roles and now will be serving in more of a leadership position. So while there were a host of great candidates, we had to narrow the selection to 7. So these ambassadors will be leading small group discussions and helping the KCC program address what's happening throughout the sites, their sites. There will be information about their roles and who gets selected and how that works, how you can take part in that, maybe next go around, and all of that information later. And that could be a whole training that we'll talk about later. But for now, I just wanted to introduce the 7 ambassadors. So I'm just gonna go through the names, and if you hear your name, you can just give a high five or whatever, but you'll be meeting everybody more detailed soon. But here we go. So Annette Neblett from North Hardin High School is one. Hey, Annette. Haley Kaufman from McCracken County High School. Hunter Cleary from Casey County. Jessica Jones, Whitley County. Random Harrison, Caverna High School. Sabrina Shepard, Lynn Camp High School. And Skylar Slater from Boyd County High School. Great, thanks everyone. We'll be looking forward to working with you all. And I think the first meeting today is at 3 for that, to kick it off. All right, so couple more key folks. Gail mentioned earlier that this program would not exist without the partnership of KIA, the Kentucky Higher Education Assistance Authority. So the first individual I'd like to introduce you to is Kim Dolan, the Director of Outreach Services, to talk about her role with the organization and the importance of the KCC KIA partnership. Is Kim on now? Or not yet?
She was, but then it looked like she left.
Meg, she's not going to be able to join us this morning, unfortunately.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to transition. We're all good at pivoting. Here we go. So the next person's going to be Keith. And maybe you can speak for Kim or we'll get her back on here. But Keith is the program advisor for KIA. And many of you already know him from experience or recent communications, but I can assure everyone that you will get to know him better as we will continually tap into his knowledge of the numerous features of college access. Keith is going to share his history and his role with the KCC program. Hey, Keith.
All right. Hi, Meg. Thank you. And I apologize for that confusion. I was actually on Kim's Zoom account earlier when I first logged in, so that's why her name popped up here this morning. But unfortunately, she's not joining us this morning. But so Kim is my boss as the Director of Outreach Services at KIA, as Meg mentioned. But I serve as the KIA Program Advisor for the Kentucky College Coaches Program. So if you are serving at any of the 32 KIA sponsored locations, you have met me at some point. And if you are a returning coach, you have seen quite a bit of me. So for those of you who are brand new to the program, typically once we get really rolling into your service term, you'll see me about once a month or so, and we'll connect for site visits where I'll come in and help with whatever project you might be working on. Kind of like what Gail had mentioned earlier, some of those site visits could look virtual, at least, for the first chunk of the school year. But either way, I'm beyond excited. I'm pumped up for this group. I think this is going to be an amazing year. We're going to have to get really creative at times, given the circumstances. And I know, I've talked to pretty much every school administration under the KIA umbrella anyway, and I've noticed one thing that stands out. Of the 32 schools, I don't think I've heard this same exact plan twice in terms of what they're planning for this fall semester. So that's going to make things pretty interesting. So you'll hear me preach and preach and preach about this today, and really any opportunity I get, how much communication is key in this program for everyone involved. So by all means, anytime you've got anything to share with program staff, let us know. We want this to be an amazing experience for you. I served as a college coach the very first year we did this back in 2010. It's one of the coolest things I've ever been a part of. You really have an opportunity each and every day to make a huge impact on the students that you serve, whether it's in person or virtual. That doesn't change. We really, at the end of the day, there are a lot of students who need the assistance that our program can provide. To give you an idea, some of our evaluations over the years, we've been around since 2010, has seen that our core student population is outperforming the general population of the state by roughly 15%. So we're seeing higher college going rates, we're seeing higher retention rates, and we're even seeing, higher ACT scores, better GPAs as a result of having that close mentoring relationship that they get with a college coach. So if you're feeling like how I felt the very first day of service, a little overwhelmed, trying to figure out, okay, how do I tackle this? How do I go about this on a day-to-day basis? I always tell anyone thinking about this is, think back to when you were in high school, when you were a senior in high school or a freshman in college. Think back to what you wish someone would have told you about college. That's what you should probably share with them. And I believe that authenticity, being able to draw off your own personal experiences, I think that's why we've had so much success as a program. Obviously, there are a lot of teachers and counselors and a lot of stakeholders in the schools that have a vested interest in the success of the students. But to have someone almost like a big brother or a big sister in their corner to help them every step of the way, that's worth its weight in gold. So one thing I just want to share really quickly, something that I'm often reminded about it, and to this day, I still think about it on a regular basis. But so I served in Lewis County High School, which is in northeastern part of the state. And I remember there was a core student of mine that had, a lot of challenges, a lot of obstacles in home life, had bounced around, living with different relatives, had experienced homelessness a few times throughout high school, but he was extremely driven and very dedicated to wanting to better his future. And I remember sitting down with him as a college coach his senior year, and he had mentioned that he wants to be a veterinarian. So, okay, that's great. So that was kind of our launching off point. So we started looking at vet programs, and we started looking at Keys money and the different scholarships and things like that from KIA and other sources. And then the one thing that struck my attention about the conversation was he mentioned that, after he becomes a veterinarian, that he would want to move back to Lewis County and open up his own practice in Lewis County. And that kind of threw me for a loop, because I was thinking, by all accounts, everything that this kid has gone through in Lewis County, I would have thought that, as soon as he had an opportunity to leave, he would have left and never looked back. And I asked him, just out of curiosity, why do you want to move back to Lewis County? And the thing that he said really just struck a chord with me. And he said, I want to open up a vet clinic in Lewis County because Lewis County needs a vet clinic. So that just threw me for a loop to have someone with that wherewithal, not just to better their own life, but to also have the wherewithal to want to make the community that he's from a little bit better as a result of going to college and pursuing his passion and his dream. That's really kind of that service-minded approach that we have as a program. So it really made me think about how important it is to be civically engaged and to, have a sense of ownership for our state, for our communities that we're serving, things like that. And I hope that, you kind of keep that mentality as you work with students, that it's a lot more, it's a lot deeper than just helping a kid with a FAFSA or scholarships and things like that. You have an opportunity to really change the life for a student, but in doing so, in a lot of cases, that can help break the cycle of poverty, multi-generational poverty in a lot of cases, and can certainly, the entire community can reap the benefits of that. So just wanted to let you know that you've got an amazing opportunity each and every day, and there are these opportunities all around you, whether you're in person in your office or not, but you've got a lot of great opportunities to make a difference. So we're here behind you, even if you're not sponsored by KIA, if you're at a school that is sponsored by the Kentucky Campus Compact, we're also a resource for you as well. You'll work very closely, not just with me at KIA, but we have field staff in our outreach department. We have 13 outreach counselors. So every single one of you is within the region of a KIA outreach counselor, and they would be a go-to contact for you to schedule, presentations, workshops, things like that. And if you're curious, what does that look like in this COVID-19 world that we're living in? Our outreach counselors are fully prepared to do virtual presentations and workshops, whatever you need. So we are working hard to make sure that we can continue serving the students throughout the state, even if it is virtual. So beyond the field staff and our partnership with the Kentucky College Coaches Program, we also are the state administrator of all of the state financial aid programs. So KEYS money comes from us, as well as the CAP grant, or otherwise known as the College Access Program grant. We also have the Kentucky Tuition Grant and several other state scholarships to help make college more affordable. Beyond the financial aid side of it, we also are in charge of the state of Kentucky's 529 college savings plan, also known as KY Saves. That basically is an opportunity for families to start putting back money well in advance of going to college, and there's some tax benefits and things like that to consider. So KIA manages that those investments and those accounts. We also, if you're curious, if you get questions or are just curious in general of how we fund our partnership with the Kentucky College Coaches Program, or the financial aid programs, things like that. So the financial aid programs are funded mostly by lottery money. So if you ever wondered what happens to a scratch-off ticket, that's what pays for a good chunk of our scholarships and grants. So go buy some scratch-offs when you get a chance. And then beyond that, our outreach efforts, like our outreach counselors, as well as the Kentucky College Coaches Program, which we see as an extension of our outreach department, that's actually funded through our own revenue. So not a penny of that comes from general funds, which I always thought was pretty amazing, that KIA really, as an organization, has put their money where their mouth is when it comes to wanting to make a difference in communities across the state. So the way that they generate revenue, they contract with a lot of colleges to do verification services, default management services when it comes to loan borrowing, things like that. We also we're a federal loan servicer, so we partner with the federal government on that, and we also are a private lender as well. So we really have a lot of different revenue streams to make all of the outreach services work. One thing I do want to highlight, and we'll talk more detail about this throughout our training, is we have a ton of free publications and resources on kia.com. So we will do a run through of our website here before too long, and I'll show you exactly how to go about ordering these publications. But I did want to let you all know that we've got a ton, and I mean a ton, of stuff that will help you throughout your service term on our website, kia.com. We also have our sister website called the kygoes-to-college.com, which is a great resource that will give you ideas and information on organizing the logistics of college access events at your high school. So definitely when you get some free time this week, you'll want to check out those websites and start shopping around for the publications and materials that we can send to you. And like I said, everything on there is free. Go ahead and click over for me, Kyle, if you don't mind.
I
So
think you're in control, Keith.
oh, am I? Okay, awesome.
Or
So
Gail, maybe.
it's not me, actually. Gail, do you have control of my screen?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So just to let you all know, the general goals of outreach are pretty simple. Number one, we want to inform students of all of the different opportunities outside of high school. So one thing that is very important from our agency standpoint with this partnership is that we want to be institution neutral. So by all means, if a student is interested in a particular college, that's great, but challenge them to think about other colleges as well, because really at the end of the day, what we really want to do from a financial standpoint for students is we want them to be informed consumers. So the more options they have on the table, typically the better the decision is going to be for them and their family. But if a student, let's say, is interested in a college that might be more expensive than maybe some other options, things like that, it's not on us to be able to say, no, you shouldn't go there. So we have to be careful about the messaging about that. But we would encourage them to consider the financial side of it, things like that. So I guess my biggest goal with that conversation is we don't ever want a student to leave our program feeling like we haven't told them the full story of what they're signing up for. So that's the biggest thing when you're talking about the different types of colleges or different routes beyond high school. The other thing that we prioritize in our department in KIA Outreach is giving free information to students and parents when it comes to paying, like, not just grants and scholarships, but also the loans. When it comes to student loans, I feel like student loans get a really bad name, I feel like, or a bad rep across the nation. And I think, a lot of that has to do with the horror stories of, people who borrow $100,000 plus for their education. I'll be the first to admit I'm someone who borrowed probably more than what they should have for undergrad. And the thing about student loans, though, is that there are good loans and bad loans out there. And it's like anything else, like a mortgage or a car loan or anything. The more homework that family does, the better off they're going to be. So what our job is to do in that conversation is to inform them of the different types of loans out there, the interest rates, all of the different terms, and help them kind of figure out what all of this stuff means. So we'll do a lot of training throughout the year to make sure that you are fully aware of all of the different routes to finance college. So that's really at the core of what we're doing in outreach. And like I said, we certainly we certainly view the College Coaches Program as an extension of these efforts and an extension of the KIA Outreach family. To give you an idea, our commitment to the College Coaches Program accounts for about 20% of our overall outreach budget. It is the single biggest chunk of our budget and operating costs of our outreach department. So if you ever wonder how much we care about this program, this is top of the list from our standpoint. Go ahead and click over for me, Gail. Thank you. Just wanted to throw this out there. This is something that we shared last year at our kickoff training and orientation, just a little bit of a run through of some of the benefits when it comes to AmeriCorps. This year, I know we had discussed with the returning members, the living stipend is slightly higher than what it was in the previous service term. So it's now $13.10 per month minus taxes. But beyond that, just wanted to kind of show everyone some of the other benefits that maybe they don't get discussed near as much as the living stipend and the education award. So we also have loan forbearance programs through AmeriCorps. So, basically if you have federal student loans, you can put those on hold while you're in service to AmeriCorps. That's what I did as a college coach. And a lot of the coaches have taken advantage of that over the years. And not only can you basically put those payments on hold where you wouldn't have to worry about making the monthly payments, you can also sign up for loan interest payments. So basically at the end of your service term, AmeriCorps can pay down any interest that would have accumulated during that forbearance time. That way you don't come out owing, any more than what you did coming in. We will have some topics throughout the year to discuss like how to set up some of those benefits on the AmeriCorps portal. But I just wanted to make sure everyone was aware of that. The other thing about student loans, since so many of you have student loans like myself, I just want to make sure I make everyone aware of this, that in addition to the interest payments, things like that, just want to let you all know that the federal government still has something called the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. And essentially what it is if you serve or work in the public sector, government jobs, certain nonprofit positions, full-time for at least 10 years, you can essentially wipe your federal loans clean after that 10-year period, as long as you're making on-time monthly payments throughout that 10-year window. So the cool thing about AmeriCorps, I get asked this a lot from coaches, is does this count toward that time? And it does. So if you're interested in signing up for public service loan forgiveness, there's a form that I can send out to everyone. This is something I've done with my loans working for Kia, but that's something that the compact over the years has signed off on, where you guys can get that approval to say, hey, basically, yes, I've been in AmeriCorps service, and that's counting toward my 10 years of public sector work to get those loans wiped clean. So if you have any questions about that, please reach out to us, let us know, and I'd be happy to walk you through that process. We also can offer the health, dental, and vision through Cigna, which is our partner on that. We'll have Gail, I believe Darlene is coming in later this week to talk more details about the health insurance. Is that right?
It may be next week. We're waiting until everybody has access to their NKU portal.
Okay. All right. Sounds good.
For the training.
Okay. Sounds good. We also offer the child care assistance and mental health benefits through our program. So if you have any questions at all about any of those, please feel free to let us know. You can put it in the chat, or if you want to send us an email, we can certainly look up any information that you need. Gail, is there anything else that you want to add to that?
No, I think that is great. I just wanted to check in with Meg to see if you had anything else you wanted to say.
No, I think for now, that's a full plate.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, Eve, Megan. Hopefully this has given you at least a start of introduction to the program, and we're going to go ahead and do some policies and procedures, but I'm thinking that maybe we need to take a 5-minute break to stand up, go to the restroom, get some water, and so it's I have it 10 after, so let's start back at 15. Okay, so just a quick stand up, stretch, get water, and come back, and we'll start at 11:15 or 10:15 depending on where you are. Okay, thanks you guys.
If anyone wants to hang out and match E standard with me, that'd be cool.
Okay, there you go, you got an offer.
No one. All right.
I don't know if I'm gonna match that, but I found this in my desk that goes like that.
Hey, that is an E as well.
Is it?
It
Okay.
really, yeah, hit it again.
Okay.
Yeah, that's E. That's wild, dude. If
Yeah.
we all hum at E, I think something happens.
Probably just set off my vertigo.
Yeah. Or Cthulhu.
Okay, I've got 11:15 on my clock, so we're going to welcome you back. And this next section, so we have about an hour and 15 minutes until our lunch break. And we're going to go through some policies and procedures and OnCorps and just a little bit about member service agreements. So first up, oh, I did want to follow on something that Keith said. So thank you, Keith, for your good descriptions of things. And Keith talked about the site visits that he does and the visits that he does with the schools. And so Meg and Kyle will also be doing that for the KYCC sponsored schools as well. So even if you're not a KIA sponsored school, you will be getting that kind of support from our office. We're learning a lot from KIA. They've done this for lots of years and are good at it. And so they're good coaches for us. So I just wanted you to know that you'll be getting that as well. So next we're going to go to Keith and Kyle, who are going to just talk with you a little bit about a few of the things in the policies and procedures handbook.
All right, thanks, Gail. I'll tell you what, Gail, it might be easier. Is there a way that you can give me access to be able to share screen?
You're a co-host, Keith. You should be able to.
Okay. All right. Let's see here.
Yeah, I saw that you were co-host, but if there's a problem, I can.
All right. Let's see if this will work.
Okay.
All right. Can you see my screen?
Yes, that looks great.
Okay, awesome. Thank you all. All right, so just wanted to take a few minutes to go over some of the policy and procedures that I get asked a lot about at the beginning of each service term. And just so you all know, we have a draft of the 2020-21 Policy and Procedures Manual. It will be up on the KCC shared drive today, just so you can see the full policy and procedures manual with everything in it. But instead of, I know you all can kind of read through that on your own time. I didn't want to sit here and read through every single section on that because it is a doozy. So I just wanted to highlight a few things that I get asked probably most about by coaches at this time of year. And of course, if there's something that I don't address that you have a question about from a policy procedure, best practice kind of standpoint, just go ahead and chime in at any point, or you can ask questions in the chat box, and Kyle and I will try to address those as we go. So the first thing I just want to kind of cover is dress code. And I get it that some of you are going to be working from home for the time being, so it's a little bit different in that regard. But when you start interacting with school staff and students, things like that, just want to kind of remind everyone what our dress code looks like. So I guess technically you could say it's business casual. So, comfortable but professional, neat appearance is really kind of what we're going for. Best way I can describe what our intentions are with our dress code policy is essentially dress like school staff and faculty, dress like you're an administrator. And, the biggest reason for that is we want to make sure that there would be no confusion that we're students. We want to make sure that we are seen as an extension of the leadership of our high schools that we're serving in. So I always say, just kind of look through and see what staff, faculty, teachers, counselors are wearing. And that's probably a good bet on what we should wear on a day-to-day basis. The other thing that is really important with our program is that we have a visible AmeriCorps logo at all times. So whether you can wear, attire, which we'll talk a little bit more about for new coaches who are not familiar yet, we are working on getting the attire out to you that has AmeriCorps logos on it, things like that. But if you don't have that attire, you can also wear an AmeriCorps pin, which everyone will get access to those. And even if you're a new coach, if you are in your office, there's a good chance you've got some AmeriCorps pins laying around. So you may want to look through your desk, see if your previous college coach had left any AmeriCorps pins behind, because that could be something great to put on. But we definitely want to have the AmeriCorps logo visible on a day-to-day basis. One thing I do want to kind of throw out there as a caveat, though, to that policy of professional, business casual dress would be individual school policies can be considered on a day-to-day basis. So I know some of your schools will do like casual Fridays, or let's say there's like a pep rally, or something where they're doing like a school pride day where you wear t-shirts, things like that. I'm totally fine with you being a part of that, those types of events. So no issue there. Just kind of, like I said, have the school kind of take the lead on what they're wearing, and that's kind of how we should go about our business on a day-to-day basis. But one thing I just want to throw out there, just as a reminder to everyone about this program. So, every day that you go in as a college coach, you're really representing a lot of different organizations, the compact, the program, AmeriCorps, us, meaning Kia. So, it's very important that you are putting that best foot forward as you establish contacts and you represent our programs and our organizations. And I will also say, you never know who could end up stopping by in your neck of the woods. So, by all means, I know over the 10 years of this partnership, there have been several occasions where our CEO has asked to visit a college school, or board members from Kia will visit. We've even had drop-in visits by state representatives, from time to time over the years. So you never know who could be wanting to stop by to see a college coach in action. And I know that our higher ups at Kia are constantly discussing the benefits of the program and bragging on all of the great work that you all will do throughout your service term. So that gets the attention of a lot of people at the state level that want to see this in action. So just want to kind of caution everyone that dress every day as if, someone that you want to really make a really good first impression on will be stopping by. The other thing that I get asked a lot about this time of year are attendance expectations. So just want to kind of clarify, and once again, a lot of this language came out of our policy and procedures, but just basically this is the nuts and bolts of what we're getting at in our policy and procedure manual. If you want to read through it for more detail, you're more than welcome to look through that on the shared drive. But here's the thing that's a little bit different this year. So for returning coaches, this is new. Our new attendance expectation is a minimum of 7.5 hours per day, Monday through Friday. So before, we used to have 7 hours as our bare minimum. So it's actually 7.5. And that goes hand in hand with now that we have a 1,200 hour contract. So we want to make sure that we are able to accommodate for the extra hours on our contract for that additional education award funds that you'll receive at the end of your service term. But the other thing that we want to do is make the college coaches program, the schedule of a college coach, to be in line with the schedule of employees at NKU and the compact, as well as Kia. So pretty much everyone in state government positions works a 37.5 hour week in Kentucky. And that's kind of why we wanted to make sure that this is now in line with that schedule. So 7.5 hours is what I'm looking for on timesheets when we're approving those. So a minimum of 7.5 hours. Of course, this does not include weekends, holidays, or school closures. So if anything out of the ordinary, we could certainly talk through those individually to see what the schedule might look like. The other thing that is a policy, just want to remind returning coaches about, and new coaches, just to let you know, that anytime there's going to be an unexpected absence or coming in late, early, things like that, you definitely want to make sure that you can notify us as soon as possible. But our official policy is that you notify both your site supervisor and appropriate KCC program staff. So if you're a Kia sponsored coach, that would be me. If you're a KYCC sponsored coach, that would be Kyle or Meg, to let them know by 8:30 local time at the very latest. And I'll tell you that just from a personal standpoint, guys, that will do me a huge solid because once we get through this travel ban, which could be, very soon, I'll be able to get back on the road and meet with some of you on a regular basis. And like I mentioned earlier, I live in Cincinnati, so some of you are like 5 hours away from me. So please, please, please let me know if you're not going to be in the school by 8:30 so that we can switch around my agenda. And also, the other reasoning behind that is you might have parents or college reps coming in that might come into the front office of your school and they want to meet with the college coach, which is pretty common thing. We want to make sure that the school knows that you're in the building. So that's really the reason why we have this policy in place. I can tell you this, we're very flexible. If you ever need a day off, just talk through it with me. I'm very flexible about it, but the communication part is key in the success of this program. We're all working remotely. Even when things open up back to normal, we're all going to be working different places. So it's very, very important that I know when you're working, when you're serving in your schools. So the other thing wanted to talk briefly about are what we call alternative service locations. So in the event of school closing, so let's say snow days when we hit that in the winter, you are able to actually serve hours from other locations other than your high school. So these alternative service locations would be like public libraries, college campuses, adult, career, and ed facilities, or any other kind of government building or administrative building within your county or a nearby county. So you can serve those hours in other places, but this would not be, and I just want to kind of reiterify this to everyone, that this would not be a situation where, you just wanted to kind of get a change of scenery. This would be if your high school is unavailable. So we want to make sure that our number one priority is to being in person at the high schools that we are contracted with, that we're partnering with to provide this service to. So we want to make sure that we prioritize being able to work in our high schools if at all possible. Of course, the update to this has to do with our pandemic. So I know some of you don't have access to your buildings at this point, and who knows what the future will bring. There could be situations throughout the school year where you don't have access at some point. And of course, if that is the case, you are temporarily able to serve hours from home. So you wouldn't necessarily have to go the alternative service location route at this point in time. As Meg mentioned earlier, safety is our number one priority with this. So please, if you have any concerns at all about your office, your school location, any of that kind of stuff, please talk that over with your program staff so that we can come up with the best plan that will serve you.
Keith, can I ask a quick question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so it said that in the case of inclement weather, like if our school is closed, so is that saying that if Jefferson County closes, since I'll be working with JCPS, and they close for inclement weather, that the hours that I would have worked on that day, because I don't live in Jefferson County, so does that mean in order to count those hours for that day that I would have to figure out a way to go to Jefferson County to be available? Like what,
No, that's a good question.
That mean?
Yeah, so when it comes to inclement weather, so what alternative service locations would be that you would be allowed to serve at a different location. But our procedure that we've always followed in this program is if school gets canceled due to like snow, if it's, something like that, then you would actually not have to serve any hours that day. It would not be requirement at all. What I would ask is that you would just let me know that school got closed, you know what I mean, for inclement weather. But I just want to put that out there that if it is safe to go in, let's say you've got a project coming up that you're working on and you want to get a few hours in, then absolutely you are permitted to go to an alternative service location. So it doesn't necessarily, in your case, it wouldn't have to necessarily be Jefferson County. It can be like an adjacent county or really anywhere close to where you're at. But it wouldn't be required to do like your normal, typical, 7.5 hour day. Does that make sense?
It does. And I know the way we're starting out remotely is because of the pandemic, but would there be an opportunity, like if we wanted to work remotely, like if we still wanted to set up meetings with students, that type of thing, or like if I'm working on a project and I have my laptop and can do that work anyway, would that count? Or is that just a conversation we have to have with you?
Yeah, so that would be
our main contact.
Yeah, if you're planning on going outside of the high school, that would be one of those situations that I would kind of throw in as kind of out of the ordinary. So if there are situations where you'd be working on a project where you would not be in the high school, I would just want like a heads up so I know. Once again, if someone were to go to Southern High School at JCPS and ask for the college coach, I want to make sure that we have everyone on the same page as to why you may or may not be in the building at that point. Does that make sense?
Gotcha. No, I'm just talking about days that like the school will be closed, not days that, because any other day, like I would be there, but like, if the school is actually closed.
Yeah, if the school is actually closed, then by all means, if you've got, like a place in mind that you would want to serve hours, then by all means, just kind of shoot me an email or a text and we can talk through it but yeah, any of that kind of stuff, we're pretty flexible, to be honest, when it comes to alternative service locations. And if it's something that's a little bit longer term, like a pandemic type of style closure, then that's why we have gotten that flexibility from AmeriCorps to be able to serve hours from home. So you wouldn't technically even have to go anywhere in person in that case. That's not always the situation. That's something that they had kind of put in the springtime when everyone started closing down, and we still have that in place for the fall.
Okay, thank you.
Keith, that's what I was going to say too, that the history behind this is that before the pandemic, there was a corporation rule that people couldn't serve from home. And so that's why there's kind of a lot of fluctuation right now with the pandemic, that people are being allowed to serve from home and from other sites. And as Meg said earlier, that safety is our first concern. So the idea of having alternative places to serve comes out of the policy when we were not able to serve at home.
And I will say also, Gail, just to piggyback on that, so the other type of situation where I could see an alternative service location come up, and we had several coaches do this in the spring, and it kind of goes back to what you were talking about in terms of like special projects that you might be working on. So we had some coaches that would serve hours at like food banks and things like that as a part of the response to COVID-19. So there could be some situations where, you hear about a cool opportunity to be a part of some kind of community service project, or there's a need in your community for something, then one of the cool things about AmeriCorps service is that, in times of need, it is the expectation of AmeriCorps members to step up and help, when it's necessary. So, there could be opportunities to team up with other organizations outside of our normal run-of-the-mill activities that we would serve as a college coach. But once again, any of those like out of the ordinary type of situations, I would appreciate just kind of a heads up. Let me know kind of what you're thinking, what you're doing, that kind of stuff. Just from my standpoint and from Kia standpoint, we want to know, like, our 32 Kia sponsored coaches, we want to know who's serving where, do they have access to the building, that kind of thing. So by all means, we're flexible with this stuff now more than ever. As Gail mentioned, there's a little bit extra wiggle room on that policy from an AmeriCorps standpoint compared to what there were in previous years. So by all means, if you have any ideas at any point about alternative service locations, if your building is closed, then throw them out to me and we'll talk through it and make sure that we can count those hours. So moving on, so this kind of goes hand in hand with what we're talking about, days out of the ordinary. Once again, I'm just going to reiterate it a lot. Communication is absolutely a must in this program, letting us know kind of what you think and what your plans are, how they change. That will allow us to be able to help you figure out, what would be allowable, what wouldn't be, things like that. So what I ask is any day that would stand out on a timesheet, whether it, would be a day where you're serving fewer than the 7.5 hour minimum, or any day on the other end of the spectrum where it may be really long, let's say over 9 hours. Our expectation is that you would email program staff and the site supervisor as soon as you know about those plans. And that way we would have that written communication to attach to your timesheet if we were to get audited. So I'll just tell you, when people look through our timesheets, they look for things that stand out, and days that are shorter than our normal run-of-the-mill schedule and days that are, exponentially longer than our run-of-the-mill day. Those are the days that we get asked questions about, and we want to make sure that we have that conversation as soon as possible. So I'll give you an example of that. There wouldn't be a whole lot of these, but let's say, for instance, in the fall, you're able to do some kind of like parent financial aid workshop in the evening. So let's just say an example would be you're serving, 8 to 3:30, and you stick around till 5:30 to help parents fill out a FAFSA. That may be a 9 or a 10 hour long day or longer. That would be an example of, when you get something like that scheduled, you would just shoot me a quick email and your site supervisor to say, hey, just want to let you know on my timesheet on whatever day I'll have, this number of hours, or this is what I'm estimating for my hours. And that way, if we were to get asked a question about your timesheets and our conversation, we can show that we have already discussed this with each individual member. The other important thing, we'll talk more about this in the timesheet presentation on OnCorps, but anything that's out of the ordinary, we need notes on that timesheet. So we'll talk more about that here in a few minutes. So the other thing I get asked a lot about in terms of this category of days out of the ordinary are things like field trips, as well as what we call school-sponsored recreational service opportunities. So these would be things that would be like senior field trips, prom events, project graduation events, things like that. I don't know if these things will go on this year or not, who knows? But if they do, I want to make sure that we at least discuss this in general. So, so a couple years back, we decided to make a policy in our program to make this something that we can all follow. So when it comes to field trips, for instance, the way that you got to ask yourself on how to like record those hours is it an educational based field trip / activity or event, or is it recreational in nature? And a lot of that, you know, if you're not sure, if it's kind of a gray area, that's where your program staff can also help out, where, you know, you give me a quick call or a text and I, you know, give you my 2 cents, but a lot of this is a judgment call. So what the policy is you would have to notify both your site supervisor at your school as well as the program staff as soon as you know that you'll be chaperoning for one of these types of events. And you would only count service hours that directly align with program goals of student mentoring, college access, and or college success. And of course, those are broad categories. So you can make an argument for a lot of different conversations you're having with students that would fall within one of those umbrellas, but it's just important that you are thinking about that when you are filling out your timesheets. And I'll give you an example here in a second. And you also, if it is deemed a recreational event or activity, that we do have a cap of 7 hours that we can count on our timesheet for that. This would not count, you know, college access related events. This would only be what we call recreational events like prom or project graduation or senior field trips, things like that. And of course, you would, like everything on your timesheet, you would notate that and make sure that you have detailed notes to support why that day is out of the ordinary. So here's an example. Maybe this might help make some sense out of this. So let's say if you're doing a field trip to a college campus visit, those could be longer days. If you're serving 9 hours on that day, but you are legitimately doing 9 hours worth of work and college access related activities, then by all means, we're fine with you recording that. Let's say though the senior field trip is to go to Kings Island, for instance, and is just kind of a fun recreational kind of trip. Basically, you have a decision to make. You can technically serve as a chaperone and even count hours toward that, even if it's not really college related in general, the nature of that event. You know, you can still count hours, but there is a cap of 7 hours that you'd be able to serve on AmeriCorps time doing that. Because the way we kind of came up with this idea from a program standpoint is we feel like if you decide to do be a chaperone, you are, you know, doing work. I mean, that's definitely, you know, you'd have opportunities to meet with students on the bus ride, talk to them, you know, check in with them, things like that. But it's also, you know, going to Kings Island or a Reds game or something along those lines. So if it is recreational in nature, there is the 7 hour cap. Okay. If it is not recreational in nature and it's more educational, college / career focused, then there's not that cap of hours. Does that make sense to everyone? Does anyone have any questions about that? So one thing I will say, you know, that second bullet note about only counting hours that directly align with program goals. I'll give you an example. So when I was a college coach, I took advantage of chaperoning for a trip to Washington, D.C. With a college access program that was in the high school that I served. So this was like a 3 or 4 day trip. I didn't count like 24 hours every day that I was on this Washington, D.C. trip on my timesheet. I only counted hours within that I felt like I was like legitimately engaging with students about college, career access, things like that. So so the only hours that I put on my timesheet would have been, you know, time in the bus where I was talking about scholarships with a student, even if it was one-on-one, you know, something like that. If I was taking a nap on the bus in the middle of Virginia somewhere, I would not necessarily count those hours on my timesheet. So that's kind of where the judgment call comes into play. And I know that, you know, some of this may seem a little convoluted, but that's, once again, the communication is key. It all goes back to that. If you've got something that doesn't fit nice and neatly into a box on a timesheet, that's where you give Uncle Keith a call. We'll talk about it and we'll discuss kind of what would be the best route to go forward on that.
Quick question, Keith.
Yeah.
I was never certain. That 7 hours, is that per day, per week, or ever?
Good question. So that's actually per day. So per event, I should say. So if it's, let's say, and the reason why this came out, I'll just give you a little bit of background. So before this policy, we didn't have any kind of cap on hours. And this was something that some of the auditors had mentioned, that we had some coaches that may have served, 15 hours a day, and in their notes on their timesheet, it was riding roller coasters at Kentucky Kingdom or Six Flags or whatever. So that's the kind of stuff that can stand out to people on their timesheets. So that's kind of why we decided to put that cap in of 7 hours on those types of days. So you would essentially have that choice to make. If a school staff member were to approach you and say, hey, Random, I want you to chaperone this group of seniors to Six Flags. It'll be fun. Do you want in? You would basically have the option, well, I could serve 7.5 hours at the school, or I could do the 7 hour cap, you know what I mean, as a chaperone on that field trip. And you would basically make that decision, and you could certainly turn them down if it was something that you don't want to participate in. But we wanted to still be able to reward you for being a chaperone, because we feel like that is hard work. But once again, we just don't want to overload a timesheet with a ton of hours doing things that are not really related to what we're doing as a college coach.
Got it. Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. Good questions, guys. Keep them coming if you have any more. Speaking of days out of the ordinary, just a couple things, and this is on your AmeriCorps goal calendar that we sent out on, and it's also on the share drive, but just want to kind of highlight some program requirements in terms of AmeriCorps National Days of Service. So there are 3 national days of service in AmeriCorps that they ask all AmeriCorps members, not just in our program, but really across the nation, to do some kind of community service work and bring shine a light on community service and national engagement, things like that. So the 3 dates on the calendar, just to kind of have in the back of your mind: September 11th is a National Day of Service and Remembrance. October 24th, which is actually on a Saturday, is what they call Make a Difference Day. And that's something that they ask AmeriCorps members to partake in some kind of local community service project. So to give you some examples, what some of the coaches have done in previous years, it doesn't have to be like any major event. Some would just, maybe go to the park on a Saturday morning and pick up trash and maybe take a picture of you and your AmeriCorps logo, trying to make that small difference, in your local community. But any kind of community service project would be great for that Make a Difference Day on October 24th. And we would ask that you keep us in the loop about those types of ideas and activities. And of course, any kind of pictures that you can show. We would love to tell the story of what you're doing in your communities. On January 18th, 2021 will be Martin Luther King Jr. Day. And this is something that we've always had a pretty major role in our program. We've typically participated in Martin Luther King Day walks. So I know, for several years we participated in a march in Lexington. Last year, for returning members, if you remember, we served hours in Berea. We went to Berea College and we participated in the Martin Luther King Day activities and marched there. So if those are going on in January, I'm sure, we'll have a role in that. But I think, once again, with that being in the winter, who knows exactly what that's going to look like. I will say, on your goal calendar, guys, we typically, in years past, what we have done is schedule our mid-year training around Martin Luther King Day. So we all kind of come together and convene on that day. We participate in the march and the activities wherever we're going to be. And then the next 2 days would be training following that. So that Tuesday and Wednesday would be our typical program training during that time frame. So we do have that on the calendar. Of course, more details coming soon in terms of what that will look like, or, it could be virtual, similar to what it is here in the fall. Some other things, best practices for KCCs. These are some just quick fire topics that I get asked a lot about in August. One is, can you do fundraising activities? And this is something that at one time you were able to, and then when you weren't able to, and now you are able to again. So fundraising is a permitted activity of college coaches in AmeriCorps. You can actually count up to 10% of your total hours can be recorded in that fundraising category, which is on your timesheets. So, in your case, it'd be 120 hours. So since you're in 1,200-hour contracts, you could technically record up to 120 hours in a fundraising type of activity. The one thing I will say, and let me just stop for a second and just say, none of that is required. I don't want you all to feel like you all have to go fundraise. This is just another thing that you're able to do if you have a reason to do it. If you've got some kind of project you're working on, but there's not a lot of funding available for it, this can be a great way to put on some cool events for your students. I'll give you an example. When I served as a college coach, I did some fundraising where I was able to get a pretty sizable donation from Walmart in my community to, they actually donated funds for my core seniors to have a laptop to take with them to college. And each of my core seniors were able to purchase a laptop with that funding. So, you know, we've had a lot of different ideas that coaches have tried, different things for events or things to get for their core students. But the one thing that I ask is, if you decide that you want to do some kind of fundraising for the program or for your school, make sure you have a talk with both your site supervisor, your school staff and administration, and one of us beforehand. We just want to kind of talk through like how we would approach, you know, what type of businesses and organizations would you approach, and what would be the messaging. And the big thing that I just want to kind of bring everyone's attention to is the importance of not competing with your school over fundraising efforts. And the reason why I say that, especially in maybe some of the smaller communities, you may have, let's say for instance, FBLA in your high school always goes to this particular restaurant for fundraising every year. That may kind of be unofficially just expected that that's kind of where that fundraising money would go. So we wouldn't want to kind of cross that line and ask that organization for funding that would have otherwise gone somewhere else within the school. So that's why it's so important that we're having a discussion before we start reaching out for fundraising efforts. Make sure that you know, we're not stepping on any toes locally at your school. Of course, if you have questions about fundraising, just let me know and we'll talk through it. Social media can be a great tool to you as a college coach. Just all I'm going to say about social media is just be careful with, you know, making sure that you abide by not just program policies and expectations, but also your local school's expectations. And that varies from site to site. So just be mindful of that, you know, stay professional. Be careful about, you know, political posts while you're, you know, on AmeriCorps time and representing AmeriCorps as a program. You'll want to definitely, you know, think about doing like a separate KCC account, especially if you'll have interactions with students on social media. Make sure you know, set up some kind of professional account that is not your personal account. And then also just be very careful about, you know, making sure you don't exchange personal contact information with students on, you know, social media platforms. We want to just make sure that we're very careful, especially now in this virtual service term that we're starting out in. We want to be very, very cautious about school policies and making sure that we're engaging students in the most appropriate fashion. So two things I just want to kind of highlight also out of the policy and procedure manual that I do get asked about. We call them each and every year our cardinal rules. So Meredith, when she was the director, we would go over this each and every year. So I wanted to make sure that we include this year as well. One major cardinal rule of the program is that we are not allowed to drink alcohol while wearing an AmeriCorps logo. You know, whether you're on AmeriCorps time or not, just be mindful of that. And I know, you know, sometimes if we are able to do in-person trainings, you know, when trainings are over, I know, you know, a lot of our members may have a drink or so, you know, at the hotel bar or go out or whatever. Just make sure that you're mindful about not having an AmeriCorps logo on when doing those types of activities. And then the other major cardinal rule of our program is we are not allowed to transport students for any circumstance in our car. So the one major rule that I have when it comes to field trips that our program has, I should say, is that if you want to take a group of students to, let's say, a college campus or some kind of campus visit or any kind of field trip, our rule is that you have to have at least one school district employee with you at all times. So we don't want anyone to transport students by themselves. And then lastly, just want to let you all know about some resources that are available to you to get more clarification beyond just us with program staff. Reach out to your fellow KCCs. The more connected you are with your fellow KCCs, the better your experience will be in the program. I can tell you, you know, one of the challenges of this particular role is that you will, in a lot of cases, be the only college coach in your school with this specific set of responsibilities and tasks. So being able to reach out to other college coaches who are serving in other places can be really, really helpful to bounce ideas off of, but also to get clarification about different things from the program. Site supervisors at your school are great to lean on when you need help. program staff, of course, Kia outreach counselors and other staff at Kia, college university reps, and really any kind of college access professional. We're all kind of in this together. And that's a picture, by the way, if you're curious, of our group last year. I can't believe it. That was like a year ago at our kickoff training in Northern Kentucky last year. So just look at that group of great coaches, and we're not having to social distance or anything back in those days. So what a difference a year makes. But either way, I'm really excited to have everyone with us today. Beyond the current coaches and program staff, just wanted to throw this out there. If you want to take a snap of this, you're more than welcome to. But National Service Hotline, they're very helpful. Just wanted to throw that out there. If you have any questions about like your My AmeriCorps account, which will definitely come in handy when you start for returning coaches, as you all navigate through your education award, loan repayment, benefits, things like that. Be really, really a good idea to probably jot that number down. I think I had to call them 3 or 4 times during my process, but every time I did call them when I was a coach, I felt like they were really, really helpful and on the ball. They were able to get that stuff taken care of pretty quickly. So there's also a couple websites I added there from an AmeriCorps standpoint to take note of. So for service and benefits, nationalservice.gov. And then also, when the day comes that you leave AmeriCorps service, definitely want to throw a shout out there about the alumni programs that they have through AmeriCorps. They do a great job of keeping people connected and engaged in community service and national service whenever that day comes that you leave the program. Any questions, comments about some of those? Like I said, these are just a few things that I get asked a lot about, so I figured it would be a good idea to at least introduce that to the group today, some of these policies and expectations. All right. Gail, Kyle, do we want to take a quick break before we jump into OnCorps?
Let's see. Let's take a quick poll. We've only got about a half an hour left, so I'm want us to keep going. But our coaches, are you able to keep going? Put a thumbs up if you can keep going. Okay.
Well, there's no way for you guys to put a thumb down, so if you don't want to take a break, I'm sorry.
So if you need to get some water or get a drink or go to the restroom or something, just go ahead and go. But I think we'll go ahead. Kyle, are you going to do the OnCorps?
Yeah, I think Keith and I were going to tackle that together, and then I need to go over MSAs real fast too before lunch.
Okay, so I think we'll keep rolling, and then so we can try to get this in before the 12:30 stop time.
Sounds good.
Kyle or Keith, go ahead.
Yeah. So Keith, I'll share my screens because I've got OnCorps up. Let's see. So guys, the main way that you're going to be submitting your time, telling us your activities, is through OnCorps. So everyone will need to save this website, ky.oncorreports.com. If somebody maybe wants to drop that in the chat too, please. This is going to be where you're going to be going to enter your timesheets and monthly reports. So when you go there, over on the right here is log into your account, and we are not in the 1920 year anymore. So eventually it'll default to 2020, 2021. You'll hit submit, and you'll be able to log in here. Looks like we're the only program so far for this year, so go us. You guys will all be logging in as AmeriCorps members. And sometimes it takes a little bit. Sometimes you have to refresh the page. So just be patient with OnCorps.
Kyle, can I
Yes.
just ask a question? So for somebody that's seeing this for the first time, is there also something written down that's a step-by-step thing that you can send out later, or?
I think we have something.
We do. We've got some screenshots and kind of like the click by click breakdown of how to do a timesheet. So we can send that out.
I'm also wondering if you want to go back 2 clicks and I can record it and we could also put it up. I don't know if would that be helpful or not?
I think it's still recording, aren't we?
It should be. I think it was automatically recording from the
Oh,
start.
okay. Okay, great. Thank you.
No problem. So for the, we'll just go back. So when you're on this page, we're under Kentucky Campus Compact, AmeriCorps member, program director and site supervisor, you guys don't need to worry about. So for the new people, your login is going to be first initial last name for your username and your password. So if your name was John Doe, it would be J Doe, J Doe. For the returning coaches, your username and password should have remained the same. For now, I'm going to log in as our test member. And this is an account where you guys can mess around in and practice, and his login and their username and password is just tmember, TMEMBER. So it's pretty basic for you guys. Not too much. So today, though, we're just going to be focusing on timesheets. That's correct? Yeah. So once you log in, you'll go to time tracking and enter timesheets. So you'll be selecting a period. And we have timesheets set up for bi-monthly. So you're going to want to look at the due dates that we have listed in the share drive because it gets really wonky. So they are usually due the Friday after the 15th or the 30th/31st. So sometimes it's like 3 weeks, sometimes it's 2 weeks. It's kind of weird, but you'll get used to it, hopefully. So we'll have this first period set up. You can't go into the future really too far. Right, so when you're here, I think I set up the member to start August 3rd, which is why I can't go back. So when you go to log in your time, you'll click on the time in and you'll select when you started. So let's say I started at 8:30 this morning. So again, it might take a little bit to get used to on the eyes, but you can choose the hour and the minute in 15-minute increments. You do the same for timeout. So whenever you take a lunch, you take a break, anytime you switch between different categories of service, and I'll get into that in just a second, you're going to need to log it different ways. So I am going to take a break at 12 o'clock today. So here's where you can get into the different categories. So I was doing direct service because I was helping with a student, and it'll track your total amount of time. Over here, and then say from 12 o'clock. Okay, see? This time in, so I have to like start lunch at 12:15, I guess.
No, it's you got it under 12 a.m.
Well, that doesn't help. So yes.
There you go.
It does have some logic to it. And then I ate lunch till 12:45. It keeps track of that total. And that'll go under time off. So under these different categories, you have service, which is what you'll primarily be doing. And direct service is anything related to the program, like Keith mentioned. So working with students, college access programming, planning, stuff like that. Fundraising, which you'll know when you're doing fundraising, hopefully. That should be pretty self-explanatory. And we also added in teleservice. So we want you to use teleservice when you're not working at your site. Please use teleservice so that we can keep track of how often you are working off-site. So it is the same exact thing as direct service. Direct service is at your site. Teleservice is off-site.
And Kyle,
Training.
jump in right there just for clarification. So for those of you who do not yet have access to your school building and are like joining us, from home today, if like after training is over, if you were to do something else on your own, you would be an example of someone who'd be using that teleservice category. So just want to make sure that everyone understands that direct service is your typical, you are in person at your school. Teleservice would be situations where you are not. So if you're serving from home. Now, the one caveat to that I want to throw out there would be if you are doing like a field trip to a college campus at some point in the spring, because you would still be kind of on a school affiliated trip, I would count that as direct service, not teleservice. So, so if you're, you would really reserve that category only if you are, serving from home or, not at your host site.
All right. Thank you, Keith. So the training part, this is where it can get a little tricky. Trainings that can only account for 20% of your total time, I think is the correct number. So that's anything that's sponsored by your school, by us at the Compact, by AmeriCorps, by KIA, or other recognized state and national programs. So CASPA, if you're doing a FAFSA training. So like today, you would be logging hours as trainings because this is a training, and not as direct service. So, if you're not sure if something's a training or not, you can let us know, and we'll be able, or you can ask us and we'll let you know whether it's training or direct service, or whether it's an official training that you should be counting. But for right now, I'm going to be taking a lunch. So time off includes lunch, breaks, personal time off, or when the host site is closed. So we do like you to enter in that you've taken your lunch, just so we know that it's not it's not counting towards your direct service. So then let's say at 12:45 till 3 o'clock, I have a training. So I attend a training that's hosted by Serve Kentucky, which Gail mentioned earlier. They're talking about policies and procedures for like over 2 hours today. So I'm sorry. But did you guys notice that when I entered in time for that third line, it added an additional line automatically so that you're not limited to just 3 lines. And let's see. So down here, it's counting what's going towards service. Does that come up at the top? That'll all be tracking up here as well at some point in your profiles. So then, how much longer do I need to work today? So from 3 to 4:30. I went back to working with students. So it's adding up all the different, it should be. Oh, I took it, that's why. Huh. Okay, so see, I'm now at 7.25 hours between direct service, training, and direct service again. So I need to work a little bit longer, it sounds like.
And one thing that brings up a good point, Kyle, is, when you all are kind of trying to figure out your day-to-day schedule of making sure that you get that 7.5 hour minimum in each day, just kind of keep in mind that it would not be counting that time off in that calculation. So just kind of keep that in the back of your mind as you enter your time and try to figure out, okay, how long do I want to take for a break, that kind of thing. Also, just real quick, we got a great question from Angela in the chat box. She put, so for those of us who are basically starting out remotely, their districts are not open. She's asking if we log that as direct service or teleservice, or does it depend on if we are working from the school building or from home? So that's a great question, Angela. So in your case, if your school is unavailable to you and you're not serving inside your school building, that's where you would use that teleservice category on those hours. But if you're able to actually access your office at your high school, even if the students aren't there, then you would still count that as direct service because you're still directly serving in that host school. So if you have access within your brick and mortar building, it's direct service. If you're serving from home, that's where you would use that teleservice. So it's really where are you serving those hours, not so much are they in class, because I think we're going to have a lot of schools that aren't going to be in class, in session, where the students might not be in the building for a while, but you might have access to your building here soon. So you would be using direct service in that realm. Now, I will say this, the one thing keep in mind that throws that out a little bit is training. So remember, training category, you can't pick like teleservice and training in the same category. It's one or the other, because teleservice is part of the service category and training is its own category. So like, for instance, today, we're all a part of college coaches training. Like everything we've done so far from 10 a.m. on essentially will be in that training category and not direct service or teleservice. Does that help kind of answer some of that question?
Yeah, and we'll usually when we have trainings, we'll usually follow up with, hey, here's what we did today. Here's how you should be logging it in OnCorps.
So I would say, be on the lookout for an email this week, probably toward the end of the week as we wrap up, since we're going to have training a little bit every day. This first group of timesheets will look a little strange because you'll have timesheets like, for instance, maybe not so much today since it's so training based today between us and what Serve Kentucky has this afternoon. But like tomorrow, we're only going to go from like 10 to noon for training. So like you may only have one of these lines under that training category. The rest of your day will be either direct service or teleservice, depending on what your local situation would be. And then it also looks like, Carmen, you've got a question. Will she need to set up a whole new account since she's serving at a different location? Kyle, I'm afraid I don't know the answer to that. Would she need to set up a new one?
Nope. It's kind of weird. In OnCorps, your site is determined by your site supervisor. So right now, Keith, you're her only site supervisor, so she's just listed as Kia. But once we get an Edmonson County person, I'll be able to rearrange it and it'll be all set. So Carmen, you don't have to. So
she wouldn't have to do anything special on her end then to get everything up. Okay, good.
So I'll go into detail. So let's say tomorrow, this is your typical day with the training. And then 10 to 12. Training. Well, okay. Oh my gosh, you guys have to put in the hour. It does not remember. So you guys can, instead of doing like messing around with this in your own profiles, again, you can mess around with this in test member, and that's team member for login and password.
Yeah, and we definitely encourage anyone, especially if you're new to OnCorps, if this is your first time doing it, definitely log in, like he said, team member for the username and the password, both team member, all lowercase. And that way you can with this and not mess anything up on your actual timesheet. So you can kind of play around and get used to it. I know the format of it takes a little bit of getting used to.
Definitely.
So,
after you fill all these out, and for weekends, you can just leave those blank, right? That's what we prefer, Keith. You don't need to put like 0, 0. Okay.
Yeah, you can just leave those blank and it'll still.
Yeah. So just on the days you're working, but if you take a day off, please let us know. So say I want to take Friday, August 14th off, which I think I am. You would put in like 8, put in your normal hours, 8 to 4, time off, and say, so this little general comments on here is going to be a lifesaver for you guys to clarify anything that you've done special, or why the hours are weird. And so Keith and I and Meg and everyone are going to be, your site supervisors are going to be looking at this for any weird stuff that's happened. So August 14th, took a vacation day. And then, so if you want to clarify what you guys were doing, so August 4th, I don't know how to spell August. We had KCC training, which is what the training we had. So, I mean, you don't have to get into like super detail, like every, oh, I took a lunch at Arby's on, the 13th. Like, you don't need to go into too detail. But if your lunch break's maybe like longer than an hour and a half, maybe you should put a clarification. But it's just something you'll get used to with the notes. And we might, it might just be on a case-by-case basis, like, hey, can you, just elaborate on why on the 13th you worked 8.5 hours, or like, what kind of training did you attend that was 4 hours long?
Yeah, and I'll just tell you guys, kind of put yourself in our shoes or like an auditor's shoes. Like imagine like if you're an auditor and you're looking through all of these timesheets and you don't know anything about the College Coaches Program, or what you would be doing on a day-to-day basis. They should be able to get a general idea of like your schedule and kind of what you're doing on these days that are kind of out of the ordinary. And that's kind of what I was getting at in the previous session topic of best practices. So really use that general comment box, as much as you can, because that really does help us kind of explain, okay, that's why the 14th has 0 hours served. It's because, oh yeah, they took a vacation day or whatever the case is. So we got to make sure that we're able to explain anything that would stand out to an auditor or anyone that would be looking at these timesheets. So once again, when they're scanning through these timesheets or when I'm scanning through them, I'm looking for most of the days to be probably 7.5 hours, since that's, the bare minimum per day, so somewhere in that 7.5, 8, 8.5, somewhere in that ballpark is what most of those days should be. You don't necessarily need a comment on those normal direct service kind of days, but use any of those other categories outside of direct service, I would expect a comment on there. So anytime you're going to use the training category, because there are caps from AmeriCorps on how many hours you can use on that. That's why we have to be so specific and send out those emails and say, okay, everyone, put this number of training hours down on your timesheets. That's why we have to send that stuff out, is we got to be careful about the max that we're able to put on those categories. So just make sure you're mindful of that. Anytime you use any other category other than direct service, I need a note there. So like teleservice, let's say you're in a situation this week and next where you don't have access to your office. If that's the case, that's totally understandable. Put teleservice instead of direct service down each day, but put like what Kyle's doing, like a generalized note, August 5th through the 12th did not have access to office, served remotely, something like that, just so I can kind of see, okay, that's why we are not serving at Holmes High School. We're doing it, somewhere else because we don't have access. So once again, communication is key, being able to just let us know and let anyone who were to look at these timesheets know, okay, this is why this particular day is kind of standing out, looks a little funky.
So once you're done, you've got them all in. I've never actually submitted a timesheet. So Keith, it's authorize and submit, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So saving is just saving the progress, and then authorize and submit. Let's see what happens. Okay. It
And
was successfully
it says it
submitted.
was submitted successfully. And one point that does remind me, Kyle, to just be careful of also, as you had mentioned, these are kind of like bi-weekly, but it's the 1st through the 15th is one timesheet, and then the 16th through the end of the month is the other timesheet. So each month will have 2 timesheets that you have to submit. You're not able to actually submit for time that hasn't occurred yet. So for those of you who are going to start working on the timesheet, if you're the type that, you'll go in every day and update this, which is great. The first timesheet's not due until the 21st, but you couldn't theoretically submit it to us until after the 15th. If you've got hours, in the future, you can't actually submit that until those hours have actually gone, so that we can say, okay, with confidence, this person served this number of hours on this particular day. So,
Yeah, so we'll have to unlock this.
like
so
that
people
save
can-
button, if you want to update this throughout the next couple weeks, you can. Just make sure you hit save and not the submit button.
Yeah, we'll unlock it to make sure this gets unlocked. Or people could go into the 1920 year and mess around with it. That might be easier.
I'm just going to check in for a time check. We have 15 minutes left. So I'm wondering if you want to switch over to member service agreement, unless there's a burning question from anybody.
And I just want to reiterate, once again, check out that team member account. That's where you're going to start getting comfortable with these timesheets. It takes a few cycles, and that's totally fine. Now, we'll say this also, guys. I look really carefully at these timesheets. If there's a mistake or an error, it's not a big deal. I'll send you a quick email, and I can unlock it and send it back to you. And then, I would just ask that you resubmit it with whatever edit that you need. So we'll get through this. It'll take a few cycles through this before it really starts getting comfortable.
Yeah, so it looks like the 1920 year, if you guys want to try that, there's a lot of different timesheets to mess around with. Okay. I can't see the chat very easily, but is there any burning questions in there?
Madison has a great idea about keeping a written record in a planner or something, so that you have you can do that quickly and then go in and put it in your OnCorps. That's one option.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion. And you all know, when students get back into session, high school can be really chaotic places. So having some kind of system that works for you to keep things organized that you can kind of jot down on the fly will be really, really helpful, because you're not always going to have time to sit down in your office and log those hours or your monthly reports, that kind of stuff. So getting a system that works for you is really a nice step to think about in your first couple weeks of service. Great suggestion.
All right, I am going to go through the MSA within the next 12 minutes. Hopefully it won't take super long. So last night I sent out a PDF version of the MSA to people. And also in the share drive, there is a Word and a PDF version. So the first part, very important, is putting your name, address, your work phone if you know it, your email, listing the high school that you're going to be working at, your signature, and the date. So I know that a lot of you guys probably won't have access to scanners to physically sign stuff. So when you do an electronic signature, please don't just type your name. Our grant funders don't like that, because anyone could have done that. So they prefer if you enter in a physical signature. So I have one saved. Oh, that is super huge, but they prefer if it is like that. And this is a lot easier to do on a PDF. If you guys have a saved online signature with a PDF, it's pretty easy. You can type in the date, you can type in a lot of this other stuff, but they really ask that signatures don't just be typed out. So this part's pretty explanatory. Anywhere that it's highlighted is going to be something you're going to need to fill out. So I'm starting August 3rd, 2020. So please be sure for like 99% of you that are on here, today is going to be your first day of service. And whatever you write in here should match your first day in OnCorps. So I know for like Sydney and Bethany, you guys haven't officially been given the all clear yet, so you guys won't be doing August 3rd. But for everybody else, you'll be doing August 3rd. And please remember to initial every page. At the bottom corner of every page is to initial. They want to make sure that you've signed off on every single page, all 20 glorious pages of them. So briefly going through this, member eligibility, which you guys have all done because you're in, your citizenship was verified. The position description, which everybody saw when they applied, it's really not changed in the past 2 years. Past few years, I don't think. So you'll be signing off on that. Another place for you to enter in the day that you started, agreeing to serve in the full-time capacity, 37.5 hours a week, from August 3rd to May 31st, 2021. This talks about the living stipend and the education award. So for the 1,200 hours, it's $4,336.50. So again, you'll need to put your electronic signature here, stating that you've read this and agree to it. And the date, another place for you to put the date. Very repetitive, so we apologize. Another initial. This is talking about timesheets, a lot of stuff we've gone over already. Benefits of service, and the pay, the education award, how often you're supposed to work. This page is about the healthcare. If you choose to do so, and you'll be able to choose healthcare farther down the document. Also talks a little bit about healthcare or childcare, where you can learn more about that. Loan forbearance, which we talked about a little bit earlier, but how you can do that. We have a mental health program called the Member Assistance Program, and it's through All One Health. It's free. We don't know who uses it or anything, so it's completely anonymous. If you feel you need to use it. Again, more about the Education Award. A lot of gobbledygook about standards of conduct. So a lot of this stuff you'll be hearing about at the Serve Kentucky webinar this afternoon about prohibited activities. Basically, don't do stuff in your AmeriCorps logo or on AmeriCorps time that isn't related to service. So don't drink, don't union organize. I know a lot of you guys are into that, so please avoid union organizing. Advocating for political events, political candidates, that's a big one. You also can't get into like religious instruction. Again, you can worship whoever outside of AmeriCorps time. You can advocate for a certain party or a certain movement outside of AmeriCorps time. But while you're in service, please avoid doing those. This is about making sure you're not really taking over someone's job, non-duplication of services, a little bit more on fundraising, some of your guys' rights, what you can do if you experience harassment, who to go to, and kind of what your course of actions are. The bad stuff that can happen to you for violating standards of conduct. So we're halfway there. There's a lot, I know. What happens when you're released from term of service for any reason, whether you choose to leave or whether you are asked to leave. If you feel you are wrongly terminated, steps you can go through here. Hopefully none of you guys are wrongfully terminated. Again, the time commitment we ask. attendance and timekeeping. A lot of this stuff we've kind of gone over. We'll get into monthly reports at a later date. We'll also get into evaluations at a later date. But know that you will be self-evaluating and you will be receiving evaluations. And service days that Keith already mentioned. We had to add a little amendment to the MSA about COVID-19 site closure and allowing for teleservice. This, days you would typically have off. We're not expecting you to work on federal holidays, especially if your school's closed, because we won't be working either. A lot of this stuff Keith has gone over about absences, bereavement. So here's some more stuff where you need to sign. A standard media release saying like you're not going to get royalty checks if we use you in a video, stuff like that. Understanding of non-eligibility for unemployment. So as AmeriCorps members, it's a gray area, but your national service members, which is not quite employment as considered by the government. So unfortunately, if members, if you leave or if you're fired, you don't qualify for unemployment. I know that's not ideal right now during COVID, but there are certain exclusions, like if your site is closed, like say your high school closes permanently, then you would be eligible for unemployment, but that's about the only reason. So just saying that you recognize that you do not qualify for unemployment if you leave or if you are asked to leave. So this is a big one, guys. Health insurance request or waiver. If you would like to request health insurance, please sign the health insurance request line. Do not sign the health insurance waiver because we will get very confused. Please choose one and sign and date. And if you choose healthcare, our office will enroll you and we will follow up with additional instructions on the benefits and everything. I believe Darlene carried over people. So if you had healthcare last year, I think we have assumed that you are electing healthcare this year, but please sign this anyway so we can double check our list. If you don't want healthcare, then you don't have to worry about it. Just sign the waiver if you don't want healthcare through us. Same thing with childcare. If you don't have children, well, you just waive your rights to the AmeriCorps Child Care Plan. If you would like childcare assistance, there's more information earlier in the document, and you can sign this, and we'll let you know. Again, signing and acknowledging your living allowance. Signing that you've read the whole MSA and the policies and procedures, which we also have in the shared drive. So you'll sign that. Just stating that you've read the full document, the policies and procedures. Signing here for the last time, your name and date, the date of service, excuse me. And then we'll sign it afterwards. And then initialing that page. And you're done. I know I flew through that, so please be sure to read through this thoroughly if there's anything you would like to learn more on. And we're available for questions about this. I know it is a lot to throw at you, especially for the new people. But there's a lot we are required to put in here. And a lot of information to share with you. So it looked like there was maybe one thing in the chat. Was it a pertinent question?
I think it was about faxing this form.
Let's see. So yeah, okay, I see the chat now. So if you don't have a work number, yes, you can just list your cell phone. That's fine. And then faxing, you can. I don't know if I have it in my email signature right now, but I do have it on my business card.
You don't. I just checked it.
Okay. I know I have it on my business card. So I'll get back to you guys on the faxing. But yes, that is an option. We have done that in the past.
One thing I just want to throw out there, I've gotten a few questions about the day-to-day schedule and the 7.5 hour minimum expectation per day, and specifically like what to do now, like if buildings are not quite open yet, staff and faculty aren't available, so similar to what we dealt with in the spring for the returning coaches, we're going to have to get really creative, but our goal is to certainly work toward that 7.5 hour schedule, as much as we can. So this afternoon, I'm going to be sending out an email with some ideas of getting started for the service terms and things, different project ideas, things like that might be able to eat up some of those hours in a creative way to get ready for your students when things do start up. I will say this also, that there will be some creativity, but also flexibility in the day-to-day schedule. So someone had asked me if you could work outside of your normal, 8 to 3:30, 4 o'clock type of range right now. If your building is not open, the students aren't back yet, absolutely. So, if you have kind of a wonky schedule, if that makes it easier to get some of these projects done, you would certainly be able to do that kind of stuff. But I just wanted to kind of throw that out there for the whole group to kind of think about. But we definitely, outside of our training, because once again, I know we've got a pretty book solid day today, but beyond that, throughout the next 2 or 3 weeks, it's going to be pretty much 2 hours of training a day. So we would definitely want you to serve beyond just the training each day. We would want you to begin reaching out to contacts, working on projects, getting your office ready, things like that. Gail, do you have anything you want to add to that?
I just wanted to add that doing research and preparation is part of service. So you don't have to put that into training. It is your service. So if you, during this time, if you want to spend it to, get yourself up to speed on scholarships or, the different colleges and universities around the state, all of that kind of research is service. So that you can spend this time of, which you might not have later on to, sorry, this is Raja. When you're busy working with students, but right now you might have that time.
Absolutely. And that'll just make it easier, when we do get the students back and working and things like that. So I'll send out an email to the group. So, just to give you some good ideas for like websites to check out and some of your self-guided training. But a big chunk of this job, guys, will be kind of training on your own outside of just what our program is able to do, in terms of our official training. So continuing research and looking out at these different websites and resources will be very helpful to you throughout your service term.
Okay, were there any other things in the chat that you guys needed to respond to? I think that was it, right? Yeah, okay. Okay, so we've come to our 12:33 hour. Thank you all so much. I know this is a lot of information, and we're really grateful for your participation. This afternoon at 1:30, we'll all be joining the Serve Kentucky call to find out about AmeriCorps 101 and prohibited activities. If you have any trouble getting on there, contact Kyle or Keith or I or Meg, and we'll get you connected. Kyle just put it in the chat so that you can have it right there in case you need it. And then let's say at 3:10, 3:10, let's use this same link that we used this morning for ambassadors to get on a call. We'll just take a quick break from the Serve Kentucky call, and then at 3:10, the ambassadors and staff will get on to do some chatting. Are there any last questions? We were going to do a checkout, but we'll start with a check-in tomorrow. So when you're kind of thinking about what happened today and what you learned, tomorrow or tonight or whenever, just write down some things that are fuzzy or that you still have questions about, and we can put those in the chat tomorrow when we get started, just so that we can make sure that we're kind of keeping touch with you and finding out what's not clear, so that we can go over things again or in a different way to help you be successful. So you can write those down on your on your notepad today, and then tomorrow when we start, we'll put those in chat. All right, anything else? Meg, Keith, Kyle, anything else we need to? Okay, all right. So we'll see you at 1:30 on the Serve America or Serve Kentucky call. And then we'll see you again tomorrow, same link at 10 o'clock Eastern, 9 o'clock Central. Thanks, everybody.
Is the Serve Kentucky at 1:30 Eastern time?
Yes, 1:30 Eastern.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
All righty, we'll see you then.
See you.